Today I want to talk about a subject of being frugal versus being a cheapskate. As with everything in life, it's super important to find that balance, that golden medium, that's something that is right in the middle, just perfect or just right. And it's hard, which is why some people go viral on TikTok when they are the channels who promote frugality or just like being good with money, and then they do something really out of pocket, just like really unhinged, and everybody's like, okay, maybe that's a little bit too much. Maybe you should actually reconsider, and like it's okay to buy something and not like use the same item when it's unsanitary. The definition of being frugal is being careful about spending money or using things when you do not need to. Frugal people prioritize spending money on things that add value to their life, and they avoid using money for what they don't consider important. Those who are frugal recognize the value of their time, health, and happiness over material possessions. That is a really good definition. While being a cheapskate has a bit of a different definition. A cheapskate is someone who is tight with money. Cheapskates will do anything to avoid spending a buck. Some people spend too much money. They're always picking up the check and running up their credit cards. Other people are the opposite. A cheapskate is cheap, meaning they avoid spending money to an extreme degree. Based on these definitions, I think it's important to recognize the difference and also know where you may be overstepping. If your goal to just be frugal and save money, you have to be really careful to not turn into a cheapskate. And the reason why it's dangerous is because sometimes too much really is too much, and it can put you and others in danger. A lot of you probably heard of or seen the show Extreme Cheapskates. I'm pretty sure it's free to watch on YouTube. There's a few seasons. And honestly, if you don't have a strong stomach, like if you have a weak stomach, you probably should not be watching that show, because people who are on it, and I do believe that the producers of the show, because it was filmed by TLC, definitely exaggerated a lot of things and how these people possibly live their lives. I don't even know if these stories are true or not, but basically these are series that are portraying people who are trying to be so frugal to the point that they are extreme. And they're not called extremely frugal people, they're called extreme cheapskates, because there is a difference. And some of the examples would include taking a shower and then using that water to do the dishes afterwards, or instead of using toilet paper, trying to save money, using reusable cloths. Honestly, if I love to watch an episode of The Hoarders, even though it does make me feel some type of way, I just cannot get through an episode of Extreme Cheapskates, because even if it is exaggerated, I know for a fact that there are people out there in the world who are living like that, who are trying to be like so cheap to the point where they're just like doing it a little bit too much. Or there was a guy who, instead of buying ketchup, he would drive in his car from restaurant to restaurant and ask for their little ketchup and mayo packets. Like, first of all, you're probably spending more on gas. Why can you just not buy a $5? So like basically these are the people who are going a little bit of an extra mile to try to save money and be frugal, and they'd be like, well, if I don't do this, if I unplug this, I'll save 17 cents a month. In the large scheme of things, it would be such ridiculous sacrifices that they would have to make in order to save such minuscule amounts of money, that as a result it actually might cost them thousands and thousands down the road, whether it may be their health that they're hurting, or it could be their home that they're just not maintaining properly in order to save money. But as with anything in life, if you cheap out once, you might have to pay twice. I have seen this time and time again in my life, whereas you see two options. One is a little bit cheaper, another one is more expensive. So then your options are, okay, well, I'll just go with the cheaper one. And, you know, half the time it's probably going to be just fine. But a lot of the times, the other half, it's when you just bought the cheaper one and then you realize, okay, you know what, I actually should have gone with the more expensive one. So then you end up paying for the more expensive one too, and then you're not able to return the first one. So then you end up spending basically double instead of just going with the really good option in the first place while trying to save money. I think in this economy, a lot of people are trying to search for options and compare prices and save money, and I always do too. Like if I'm working on a landscaping project, I would reach out to 5 different landscaping company and get quotes basically from all of them, just because I want to know even the range, because honestly these days it could be 300, it could be 3,000, it could be 10,000. Sometimes the prices vary so much, it's actually kind of wild. How do you determine whether you're frugal or you're actually a cheapskate? And I think an important question to consider is whether you are putting yourself, your own health, and other people's health at risk. An example of that would be eating food that is expired, or buying food at the store that's like on sale, that's literally like the day of or maybe the day after it's actually expired, and you're like, oh, this is such a great deal. However, the consequences of that might be you may get food poisoning, and you may cause that food poisoning for the entire family, and thus a few dollars in savings end up costing you a lot more in the long run, because then you also need to buy medicines to make your stomach feel better and things like that, and potentially even go to the doctors depending on how severe this can be. Sometimes people who live extremely frugally or on the borderline being a cheapskate, they don't even realize how harmful this type of lifestyle may be to them and to their family members, unless they actually do the mental work of writing everything out that they're doing and kind of going through it and thinking very reasonably, like, okay, what I'm doing, does it actually make sense, or should I go like get a more expensive health insurance, or get a health insurance in general? Because some people decide to skip out on medical insurance altogether, and in a country like the United States, it can be extremely dangerous, if not completely detrimental to one's finances. Personally, I'm all for being frugal and like comparing prices and being like, you know what, this is about the principle of saving money, this is about the principle of finding a better deal if it's objectively a better deal. However, please just be very careful and do not endanger your own life and the life of others by buying expired food or eating expired food for days, or buying low quality detergents or cleaning supplies that might be using very, very cheap and very, very bad for your health chemicals that long term could have bad effects on your health. Because after all, saving a few dollars here and there is really not gonna help us if long term there are health consequences, because then it's gonna end up costing thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. An example of being frugal though, when my husband and I were looking to buy a really nice mattress, like to have it as an investment, we actually went to the Purple store in Vegas and I tried all of them, and I genuinely did not like feel anything life-changing or special, because they let you like lay on them for 15 minutes and maybe even take a nap. And I was like, you know what, I'm kind of surprised, because I hear a lot of people talking about how amazing Purple is, but when I went and tried sitting, laying on it, I was like, it feels fine, but not like life-changing. So then we usually stay at Hilton hotels, and I would always check like what mattress they have, because I would have like a really good night's sleep, and I noticed that they always have Certa mattresses. So then I was like, okay, let's look into Certa mattress, because it's significantly cheaper than Purple mattress, but also I feel like I get an amazing night's sleep. So then we go to the Ashley store and we found the perfect one that wasn't too soft, that wasn't too hard, it was just like perfect. And then they said that they didn't have it in stock, they needed to order it, so I was like, okay, fine. Then it was around Labor Day weekend when I found that same exact mattress, but at the Mattress Firm store instead of the Ashley store. At the Ashley store, they were selling it for $12.99, and the Mattress Firm had sold it for a little bit cheaper, and it was also some kind of Labor Day sale, and it was like $9.79 for essentially the same one. The characteristics of it were identical, it just went by a different name at two different stores, but the price was basically saving a few $100. But the old me would buy the absolute cheapest one, and the new me is like, you know what, if we are spending 1/3 of our life, I actually feel good about spending money on this investment. And I was still being frugal by finding a better deal for the identical product. And now I'm actually having a really good night's sleep every night, so I guess it paid off. And it's also kind of funny because a lot of people say, well, who keeps the mattress store in business? Like, who buys mattresses? And to be honest with you, I am pretty sure every 2 years we moved, we had to buy a new mattress, or we had to get rid of it, or it was just such bad quality that would like sink too much. So I was like, you know what? I have been keeping that store in business because I do keep buying mattresses for some reason. But now I have this good one, so I'm not going to be buying one anymore. And I completely understand that there's also a lot of decision fatigue when it comes down to purchases, which is why doing less consumption kind of solves that problem as well. It eliminates the amount of things you would like to purchase. Also, it's totally up to you to decide, whether you want to be frugal or whether you even maybe want to call yourself a bit of a cheapskate too. Like, that's totally fine as long as you do not endanger other people's lives. And also as long as you think about your decisions long term and not just in terms of, well, today I'm saving $2.